Good morning and welcome to the MSP Studios in Bootle for the Liverpool Chamber of Commerce's latest monthly strategy event, focusing today on the future of Liverpool and its economic recovery. Today's session takes place on the topic of urban regeneration, which is perhaps the most timely topic we could be discussing today. I think it's fair to say this week's release of the UK government's best value report into operations in the planning, highways, regeneration and property management functions at Liverpool City Council has been a shock for many businesses across the city. And I know under the leadership of Tony Reeves as Chief Executive of the Council, they'll be able to move forward to deliver best practice. And we were delighted to hear him receive the recognition he deserves in the announcement in Parliament earlier in the week. We as a Chamber will work with Tony Reeves to continue to communicate updates to our business community and to showcase the great work of many in development and regeneration. Tony was scheduled to join today's event, but understandably he has his staff to focus upon today, and we genuinely look forward to welcoming Tony to a future session with the Chamber as we look forward to supporting Liverpool's economic recovery. I think it's fair to make a couple of comments at this stage about the Chamber's position. We've been a partner of the Council as the private sector representative for the development of Liverpool City Plan for the last 18 months under the direction of Tony Reeves, and we'll continue to undertake that responsibility, which we hold very, very dear. We've also worked very closely with the Council on its COVID-19 response, supporting measures and participating in the economic recovery activities that have been undertaken, and the Council's response throughout the COVID-19 crisis has been excellent. We also believe that the current leadership of the Council has made considerable strides in implementing the changes that are required, and we also think that the business focus within the strategic approach has been very laudable and very, very supportive of business priorities, and we look forward to that continuing going forward. And also it's very, very important to emphasise there's a huge amount of positive developments for the city that we can be encouraged about. The Paddington Village development at Knowledge Quarter, Everton's potential new stadium at Bramley-Moore Docks, the Freeport development opportunity announced in the recent budget by the Chancellor. The progression of our city should not be impeded by this blow this week. We still have much to be positive about. The private sector will play a key role in responding to the report and also instigating the economic recovery that we need to focus upon post-COVID-19. Now today we welcome a panel to talk about what the future of regeneration and economic recovery looks like in Liverpool in the year and years ahead. 3 years ago, the British Chambers of Commerce partnered with Legal & General to deliver a report entitled Building the Towns and Cities of Tomorrow. It looked at the principles underpinning urban regeneration and economic development, particularly the availability of cash to invest in infrastructure investment and capital for start-up businesses to scale up, the importance of investment outside of London to improve productivity, and the empowerment of devolved powers to cities to create place-based cities fit for the future. At the time, Liverpool's response focused upon the importance of shaping the investment proposition into a cohesive narrative, building effective communication and collaboration between city leaders, maximising universities as magnets for investment, being proactive and not reactive to investment propositions, and relocation opportunities and improving the city's housing stock to boost attractiveness to talent and council tax returns. Now today's session will revisit some of these themes with our panel, considering how urban regeneration can drive future sustainability, growth within the Liverpool City region as part of the levelling up agenda that government has made a priority over the course of the last 12 months. So to our panel, and good morning to our panel. Very good to welcome back several returnees and an individual making their debut this morning. So welcome back to Dave, Alison, Jessica and Adam. And a warm welcome, as I say, on debut to Reverend Dr. Tony Bradley from Liverpool Hope University. Now I'm going to invite each panellist to introduce themselves and their organisation and to make some initial observations about their own thoughts about the priorities for Liverpool and themselves over the course of the coming year. So if I may, I'm going to start with, let's start with Dave, please. Dave, welcome this morning. And if you'd like to introduce the session, please. Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Dave Saville. I'm the Business Unit Director for Wates Construction in the North West. And we deliver public and private sector construction projects from North Wales up to Carlisle. And that includes a number of schemes within the Liverpool City area and the wider Liverpool City region. I wanted to start, if you don't mind, by saying how proud we are of the part that we've played in the construction industry by remaining productive through the pandemic, which in turn has allowed us as an industry to contribute both locally and nationally to an economy that's had a particularly difficult time. And it's fair to say, as an industry, we remain optimistic around a period of growth and stability as we see the industry move into an ease on the lockdowns. We've got a strong forward order book, and although we've seen work stall due to COVID, it's been reinvigorated over the last 6 months, and then projects have started to make their way back onto the table for development. And that, in balance with also the levelling up exercise that's occurring, particularly in education, is taking us towards an exciting couple of years over 2021, 22 and into 23 actually. On a personal level, I'm quite excited about getting back to the office. As you can see, I'm in my kitchen at the moment, and the blurring of professional life and domestic life gets quite complicated from time to time, particularly when you're on calls like this. So I'm really looking forward to getting back out and attending events like this in person. But I am also very proud of my team and how they've been able to work flexibly and remotely and collaborate. But the buzz of being around your colleagues is something I'm certainly relishing. Another thing that I'm quite excited about is the free port status that the city's gained. I was just looking at some statistics last night, and £20 billion worth of material comes into the construction industry from overseas, 11 billion of which is from the European Union and 3 billion from China. So we've seen events like COVID-19 and Brexit certainly impact our supply, and we do feel the impact of that. But it's great to see the status in the city is a free port status, and frankly, hopefully I can get my hands on materials a lot easier than perhaps I've done previously.
Thank you, Dave. That's terrific. And you know, I'm conscious that this is a lunchtime session, so hopefully your kitchen setting won't cause any problems over the course of the next 45 minutes. But thank you for those opening thoughts, and I'm sure we'll come back to Freeport very shortly, a key part of the city region strategy going forward. Alison, if I can come to you, please.
Thanks, Paul. Yes, morning and morning, everybody. Thank you for asking me along today. I wear several hats, as I always do, coming here today. I'm the managing partner of Morecrofts Solicitors. We are a 6-office business with all offices within the city region, covering all of the local authority areas. And we have a mixed offering of most types of legal services and support for both businesses and individuals. We are also the firm who founded and run in normal times the Merseyside Independent Business Awards, which celebrate independence throughout our city region. And I'm delighted that Adam is here today as one of his company, one of the winners of MIB. We are looking at how we model that going forward and keeping that community together to celebrate independence within the city region on an ongoing basis. I am also the vice chair of the Institute of Directors Liverpool branch, and more pertinently today, I'm the chair of the policy committee for the Liverpool Chamber, which is the conduit between the executive and the membership to share ideas and information and inform as to what's going on at the chamber and what the members' views and what the important issues are to them. As far as the year ahead, I'm quite excited about it. I think there's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of innovation that's coming out of a crisis. I think the cliche about necessity being the mother of invention has been certainly well and truly proved this year. We've made a lot of changes in our business, which have been definitely for the better and have been things that were on our to-do list and had sat on our to-do list for a while because we thought they needed a lot of implementation, but actually, like remote working, you can bring these things in more or less overnight, and people can cope with change if they need to, with enough support. So I'm very excited about the fact that I appreciate that we're very fortunate as a professional services business to have been able to trade throughout, albeit in some different ways with different demand for our services. But I'm very excited about people and technology and how we can adapt our services more in the future. And now that we've started the boulder of change running down the hill, that actually it's going to accelerate and improve our services for our clients and for our staff, and make their working lives better. So I am very optimistic. And if anyone else like me attended the LEP conference this morning, I think you'll also have come out of that quite inspired and optimistic about what's going on in the region and the innovation that's being seen in this area.
Thanks, Alison, and I think really some very pertinent points as well in your circumstances as a city centre based law firm as well, and as we look at the regeneration of the city and the city centre and the impact of COVID, there's some real implications for what the future of city centres is going to look like, and very interested to hear your thoughts on that later. Adam, can we come to you, please? Welcome again. Look forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Of course. Cheers, Paul. Thank you. So I'm a co-director and co-founder at Archiphonic Architectural Design since 2012, as Alison's kindly introduced me already. And we work predominantly in the Northwest, particularly in the Liverpool City region. At present, our practice works predominantly on social housing projects, student developments, and residential schemes for private developers. We started seeing an influx on hospitality and commercial projects, which is quite interesting for us as well. And looking ahead towards the years coming, as I said last time I was on here, completely with objective positivity, and I think that's completely important. The pipeline for work in social housing is increased for us due to pressures, obviously, on residential provision in the sector during the pandemic. But as retail and hospitality unlocks, those sectors certainly having to change their offering and think differently about reinventing themselves for the new world, which is creating a growth area for us in the coming months. So in short, the thoughts for the year ahead are to maintain our positivity and keep on ploughing through, and I'm sure we'll go into more detail later.
Thank you, Adam. That's great. If we could bring Jessica in, please. Good to see you this morning, Jessica. Welcome back to the panel, and really look forward to hear what you've got to say from Bruntwood's perspective.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me back. I suppose I want to make I'll start by talking a little bit about Bruntwood and then a few thoughts about the year ahead. So for those of you who don't know us, we are a family-owned property company. We're a little bit different than many property investors and developers. We both invest in and then develop and then manage the buildings that we own. We've had a long-term home in Liverpool, and we work across Manchester, Leeds, and the West Midlands as well. Our focus has always been about creating thriving cities and really taking that place focus that you talked about in your introductory remarks, and recognising that by focusing on the place and the success of the place, that's got win-win for everyone, for our customers, for us, and for the people who work for us, and the wider communities that we serve. We're very proud to be in Liverpool, and we think this is a brilliant and dynamic city to operate in, and with loads of potential. And we've started touching on some of those in your introductory remarks. I just the other thing to sort of understand about the business is that we have a core office portfolio, which is what we have been typically known for, which sits in the CBD of Liverpool City Centre, but we also have a joint venture with Legal and General Capital, Bruntwood SciTech, and that focuses on science and tech facilities, specialist science and tech facilities that form in innovation districts and really start creating an ecosystem for science and tech businesses to work with universities and other businesses. And we are a partner in ScioNTech in Liverpool. I'm very proud to say we did that deal relatively early on during lockdown. So at a moment when you have this choice to step back and retrench, and particularly property sector, where you don't quite know what's going to happen, we moved forward and we really saw the opportunity and potential for Liverpool and for that particular sector, and really pleased that we did, and we didn't delay on that. In terms of the last year, our science and tech part of the business has really flown, as you can imagine. The focus around life sciences this year, the emphasis on really developing our capacity in that sector has played through to our business and to some of the wider opportunities that exist. We've recently acquired a new science park in just outside Cambridge, Melbourne, and that's not a flight to the south. That's actually about bringing the south to the north. So really creating that sort of network of connections between cities, which we think is critically important if we're to be outward looking and successful, particularly in this post-Brexit world where we need to be creating the greatest clout that we can if we're going to trade internationally. Our core office portfolio has also done pretty well during this period. And of course, there's masses of change that we've seen over this year. But as we move through this year, we've seen people, that polar argument about are cities and offices dead, or are people going to work in them 5 days a week? We've moved away from that debate and actually come to somewhere that's much more sensible around people recognising that there's flexibility that's really valuable, that people want to work a bit differently, but actually the value of coming together, collaborating, and the power of building business culture, and the opportunity for creativity, and that this idea that you can be more productive at home, that's sort of worn out after a while. You can trade on what you already had and the social capital you had and the business that you already had in train, but that becomes much harder to generate and top up the tanks with over time. And we saw with our own colleagues, as they started coming back into the office in the autumn, they loved it and they didn't want to go back. And people on the days as we were starting to go back into tiered restrictions, people were coming to me and saying, please don't make us work from home full time. We can't do it. Please don't make that happen. So Dave, I have lots of sympathy with you. And I'm sat in my nice office at home, but I'm listening to a dog barking downstairs, and I really want to be in the office with my colleagues, having a different sort of set of grown-up interaction. So if I look ahead, I think I'd say one other thing before I stop, which is, and this is on the subject of Liverpool City Council and Tony in particular. He's been a brilliant partner to work with and has provided, really strong leadership to the city. And that moment as we came out of, we were going into lockdown, and he was focusing on how to make the city safe, but at the same time focusing on recovery. I was so quick out of the traps on that, and we were delighted to be part of that programme, and it gave us confidence to keep investing in Liverpool and keep thinking about the success of the city. So we'll pick up loads of other things as we go through to this morning's debate, and possibly I've taken too long already, but that's sort of my reflections as to where we are, and I think we've got some really brilliant shoots for the future.
Absolutely, wholeheartedly agree on several of the points you made there, and particularly about the confidence that is imbued by the likes of Tony Reeves in terms of COVID response, and it does bode well for future prosperity post-COVID. I'd certainly like to pick up a couple of points around levelling up, and your point about bringing the south up to the north. I think that's particularly interesting, and also your point as well about how staff attitudes, I think, have changed in the past couple of months with regard to this working from home versus working in an office environment. I'm sure we'll pick some of that up in the context of what that means for future regeneration or future repurposing activities in the city. So thank you very much, Jessica. Really interesting thoughts to kick us off. And finally, to our debutant on one of these Chamber Strategy events, Reverend Dr. Tony Bradley from Liverpool Hope University. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Paul. It's wonderful to be referred to as a debutante. Really. I sort of feel the years are rolling away from me already. So I'm Tony Bradley, and I teach in Liverpool Hope University Business School. I teach business sustainability and entrepreneurship. I'm also the Centre Director for something called SEARCH, which stands for Social and Economic Action Research Centre at Hope, which brings together about 30 economists and social scientists. And I lead something called the Greening Markets Research Group at the business school. And we're, I guess, the smallest in number, but small is beautiful, as I was always reminded by one of my professors when I was at university. We're the smallest of the 4 universities in the city region. At Hope, we have about 10,000 students, and we're mainly an arts and humanities university, but we do have a little bit of harder science, and we have a really excellent business school, which I'm very privileged to be a part of. And Hope Business School, we have about 500 to 600 students, and we really do have a focus on sustainability and business ethics and the responsibilities that business has, and find that actually that is an enormously well-received message within the Liverpool City region, which is fantastic, really. I guess one of the things, I mean, I should say that like the Windmill Theatre, during COVID, we've not closed. The universities have all kept open, and just like my colleagues around this room, we've had to do things very differently. You know, we, at the drop of a hat, learned how to not exactly emulate the Open University, but realize that we needed to up our game very fast in terms of our skills of being able to deliver all our educational provision in an online environment. And I have to say, it's been brilliant, you know. And whilst I absolutely understand what Jessica was saying about wanting to get back into the office, many of our students have really appreciated actually what we, and I guess my colleagues in the other universities, have been able to do during lockdown in keeping things as closely to student interactions as we possibly can. It's been a challenge at some points, but at the same time, we've learned a huge amount, and that bodes well for the future, really, as we build back in better ways and look at the dynamics of the ways of working in our centres and working in our office environments, as well as working online. I direct a research centre, and well, we've had colleagues joining us for research conferences from Australia, from America, from parts of Africa, from Europe, in ways that we never could have done if we'd been calling research events into our normal campus settings. So we've seen enormous benefits, even during the tragedy that COVID has been. So we've seen the flexibility, as some of my colleagues here have been able to say, the ability to be fleet of foot and do things differently. So that's all been very positive. And of course, the university sector, the student economy, is enormously important to our city region. We have about 80,000 students a year in Liverpool. And the GVA from that is really phenomenal. And, obviously Adam in his sector, in terms of providing social and student housing, is fully aware of the impact of students in the Liverpool City region. We're one of the most student-centred cities in Great Britain. So we think we've got an enormous part to play in the regeneration and the development of the city. But if I'd just say about the future, obviously we don't know what the next year is going to hold exactly. But one thing we do know, well, I think we know, is that COP26 is going to happen in Glasgow this November. And that's going to be an enormously important inflection point for our city region. As I'm sure everybody around this room is aware, and on the webinar, the Liverpool City region, as part of the Northwest region, has a remarkable ambition to get to carbon net zero by 2040. Don't think we've got an entirely worked out roadmap for that yet, or that we fully understand exactly what the challenges of that are, but it's an enormously important aspiration, which means the road to, and probably more importantly, beyond COP26, is a very, very vital area for the city region to be addressing during this year. And I'm sure we're going to come back to this. I know I'm going to sound like a scratchy record by the end of this meeting, because I'm probably only going to say the same thing in answer to every single question. But I'm full of optimism. And I don't think we should be in any sense downbeat or pessimistic about the future for the Liverpool City region. We have the most enormous potential. We have great leadership in the city, and we have a real opportunity to set our stall out and to make a difference, not only nationally, but globally as a city region in social and solidarity, and the agenda around the transitions that we have to make if we're going to save our world.
Thank you, Tony. Again, some terrific provocations within that statement as well, I would say. We talked about place-based solutions. You've made reference to the number of students that the Liverpool City region effectively hosts, their contribution to the economy, and what role that might play in the future, particularly given obviously the implications around international students and that competition for talent. Similarly, COP26 and the net zero agenda, we will certainly touch upon that shortly. But again, how does Liverpool as a place capitalise upon its unique assets to enhance its performance to achieve net zero? If I may, Jessica, I'd like to come to you for the first question, and it's around levelling up. And we've heard each of the panelists talk about Liverpool in the context of economic recovery. You've brought to this particular session a discussion around your work in Cambridge and the options for actually attracting talent and investment from the south and bringing it to the north, almost a form of north shoring, I suppose. Within the context of that, then, what's your views on levelling up? Is it a case of going to government with a proposition, or is it a case of actually finding the opportunities through the private sector predominantly and enabling levelling up to happen almost naturally?
Well, I think it won't happen naturally, but I do think it will require the private sector to play its part, and I think it requires government to play its part. I mean, I have a particular view on levelling up and how that's best achieved, and I think it was to your point in the opening remarks around place leadership, devolution, creating a really strong sense of what a city region is about and what it can achieve, and then government supporting that with devolved funding, devolved powers, and the opportunity for the place to choose how it uses that investment. I'm afraid I think that the attempts, the approach to levelling up that the government is taking at the moment is not going to achieve what it could. So the idea of creating multiple small-ish pots of funding that individual places have to bid for, using scarce capacity that they have to do that, and maybe hitting, maybe missing on very narrowly defined projects is a waste of everyone's time and energy. And I think it misses so much opportunity, particularly when you start thinking about the relationships between towns and cities. So government, is focusing levelling up on particular towns in large part. And we know that there are towns that absolutely need change and transformation and support to provide good quality jobs in sectors of the future, and opportunities for people who live there to have the skills that they need to take those opportunities and jobs. But actually, if you do that at the cost of your city centres or your cities, it's a lose-lose situation. So when you think about agglomeration economies, when you think about city regions, that power of towns and cities operating and firing together is really what we need to get to. And all the, the analysis shows you need strong city cores to have strong towns, and strong towns to support those city cores. So I think there's much to be done on the levelling up agenda. I think having cities and city regions and leadership in those places that has the trust of government and is something that is a place where you can devolve funding to, and then those decisions get made with the public sector and private sector working together to generate real growth, good quality jobs, think about future sectors and be able to trade internationally is going to be where we need the secret of our success. And let me just give you one area that I think we should be really pushing government hard on. They want to increase the amount of funding, the proportion of GDP that's spent on research and development, science and innovation to 2.4%. This is actually, sounds like a very small amount of your GDP, an increase from 1.8% to 2.4%. It's a massive amount of money. And so that money, how that gets distributed has a transformational potential. And we need to be thinking about that in a really strategic way. It can be done, a disproportionate amount of that can be given to the north without taking anything away from the south and the Golden Triangle. So I think that really thinking about how we engage with government and work through a really smart solution to taking a place approach to science and innovation, research and development is going to be, has a real opportunity for our city regions.
One very, very quick point on this, if I may, Jessie. I'm conscious I need to give you a moment just to have a sip of water before we ask you to speak again. We've seen that the industrial strategy, which was in development for a good 2 or 3, 4 years, has basically been stopped, and there seems to be this approach that has come in, which is almost scheme-led rather than strategic-led. Just in terms of considering what you've just said, what impact does that have on an organisation such as your own and some of the investors that you work with? What impact does that have in reality? Does it impede confidence? Does it make investors question whether they should invest in a particular place? What are the implications? And I might, after you've responded to that, I might bring Tony in on that as well.
Yeah, thanks, and I'll try and be brief to avoid all the time here. But I on one level, it makes little difference to us because we're properly invested in the cities that we're in. So the work with Liverpool, with Manchester, Leeds, Birmingham, we understand the priorities of those city regions. We share the priorities. We've helped, we support the strategic positions that they've taken. We understand what those places are all good at. We understand what Liverpool's good at. And we know that the future is best served by focusing on those things. Now, government might have different funding pots and the like, but we need at place level to try and join those up as best we can and to keep everyone on the bus with us while we do that. It's quite easy once government starts dangling little pots for different towns for that strategic approach to start falling apart. So it's about kind of continuing to emphasize that if we work together, if we think strategically and smartly, we'll get the best long term for our city region and the people who live here. So it doesn't from our perspective as a business, we take a long-term view, and we continue to engage and deepen our relationships with our cities. And, you know, we sort of know that in time these things will work themselves through. But actually, it takes a lot more effort and energy, and we're wasting an opportunity, and we could be doing better as a country if we took a more strategic approach to investment.
Thanks, Jessica. Tony, I might just bring you in here. You were nodding along quite notably during the question and the answer. What are your views? So
I will say the point that I really wanted to make is we need a green industrial strategy. So the way in which the government's industrial strategy is becoming piecemeal and fragmentary and sort of competitive tendering doesn't reflect our culture and our values in the north. You know, don't want to sort of talk too much about the northern powerhouse, but a green northern industrial strategy with Liverpool City region right at the heart of that is something that is absolutely vital as we move forward. There is, of course, a potential in talking to government about these things, but of course it comes down to not local initiatives on their own, but a localized way of having initiatives. For example, we've seen that the Green Homes project has been a debacle, really. And those aren't my words, those are the words of the Environmental Audit Select Committee report that came out on Monday. But we have the opportunity in the Liverpool City region to reinvest in that. And obviously the colleagues around the room know this much better than I do from the construction industry. We need to renovate, insulate, repurpose about 10,000 domestic properties in Liverpool per year over the next 20 years if we're going to move in the direction of our ambition for net zero 2040. That generates about 100 billion a year, and we can speak to government about wanting to take a lead in that. So we have an enormous possibility in this city and city region to be able to say we are taking a future prosperity for Britain in a post-Brexit but greener world and building back better and greener really seriously. And we have to show ambition within our local industry and local construction sectors, and I know that the people around the table do that. Sorry. So with that in mind, let's bring Dave in at this point. Tony's made some points there about the construction sector, and you know, from your perspective in Wates, you know, you must be looking at opportunities in different localities. What kind of opportunities for the Liverpool City region could be brought about by this sort of levelling up opportunity, green agenda? What inspires the confidence for Wates to invest in the Northwest and potentially in Liverpool going forward?
I think if you take the sustainability agenda and zero carbon, we are as a business investing heavily in it ourselves now. We see public sector, private sector clients making commitments to it, and I think going forward, what we need to see is a real commitment to that investment. We often fall short around the capital cost piece and the initial capital expenditure on projects. And as a result of that, that prevents that investment. If we can collaborate publicly and privately in such a way that the investment is made up front, the technologies are there, the building material specifications are there, and the more it's used, the more it will become more cost effective. And certainly from the Wates Group's perspective, we're looking at delivering a number of zero carbon projects, whether they be commercial or whether they be educational facilities. And indeed, we've got a capability through Wates Living to go into existing housing stock and upgrade, as was mentioned, insulation upgrades, new boiler systems, etc. So we are poised, not only as Wates, but as an industry, to intervene and improve generally the green impact of the built environment. It just needs that leap of faith and investment, and it is a long-term investment. We understand that, but it can't be done on the cheap.
That's really a helpful insight. That I'm going to ask Adam and Alison to come in on the next point, which is about how maybe smaller organisations or medium-sized organisations can actually be benefiting from some of these opportunities brought about by Regeneration, whether it's through, Adam, in your sense, you're a key part of the supply chain in terms of stimulating new opportunities, design concepts, and bringing some of the things that Dave and Tony have talked about, bringing that literally to visual reality. And of course, Alison, in terms of the wider ecosystem, these opportunities stimulate new business, stimulates the requirements for professional services and such, and it presumably has a huge implication for some of your strategic thinking as a firm as well. So Adam, maybe if I come to you first, given that you're so directly in the supply chain, how can you plan, and how are you responding to some of these opportunities?
So look, there's many different turning cogs when you go and consider this, and obviously as Tony and Dave and Jessica have pointed out, there is a multitude of issues, and fundamentally it comes down to. We can look at it from just a really grassroots level when you consider the building regulations, like the minimum specifications that we're expected to provide, and these are certainly, like, we try to push on as many developments as we can to increase those and not just meet the minimum specification. However, as Dave pointed out as well, like it's largely built by the value of economics in this, and people's eagerness to really go and take it. However, looking at the kind of how we all move forward in this period, it really through kind of the collaboration and communication between all parties, continually, is so critical. And prior to the pandemic, I truly feel that there was a wave of kind of honest and open communication happening, and sharing how we were able to kind of keep businesses moving, and it created so many different opportunities for collaboration. However, after the crisis hit, I feel that if you consider the school child during the exam, kind of covering the homework and or covering the work at school, a lot of businesses started to work like that, and I'm glad to say that I definitely see that trend disappearing now, and once again communication seems to be increasing. So we all have that common goal, which is we want the fastest economic recovery for the city that we live in, that we work in, that we all love, and it's attractive to investors and businesses that bring more work and money and fundamentally jobs to the region. So we just need to maintain that openness that we had, and focus on that shared goal. And we just need to continue to collaborate, find those solutions, drive the city's economic recovery, and like that just doesn't happen by itself. It happens by all the cogs kind of working in the same direction.
And on that basis, do you feel confident and positive that, from your organisation, Archiphonic's point of view, Liverpool is going to be a place where you can build the majority of your growth over the coming period, or will you have to look elsewhere to potentially do that?
So look, like any growing business, you do have to look outside of the region that you originally started in. However, fundamentally, over this kind of past 12 months, we've increased our staff by 5, which is basically 100% increase of our workforce. We've taken on a BDM, Luke Rumney, which hopefully a lot of people will soon know in that process. And really, Liverpool just has an incredible amount to offer. It's such a fantastic region. And we really do need to kind of look past some of the bad press that we've been getting over the past kind of couple of years, or certainly during these instances, and recognise that we're not represented by like a handful of people. We're represented by the community, by the essence. And when we look to some of the organisations that are being perhaps discussed negatively in the media, we have to remember that there is such a huge body of like a large number of people who love this region and would do anything for it, and are fundamentally good, hard-working and honest people, and I think critically that's what we need to bear in mind.
And hopefully through this process, increased transparency and maybe even having the ultimate effect where it actually engenders greater assurance for investors looking to work in Liverpool. Alison,
one of the things.
No, sorry. Please, Adam.
Well, one of the things, Paul, is that naturally this is going to create a slowdown in our planning processes, etc. But hey, who knows? It might make it more efficient. It might make it fast. It might make it faster. Nobody, like we pointed out earlier, has that crystal ball. Nobody can say exactly what's going to happen. And like what we had at the very beginning of the pandemic, etc. We have this slowdown and then this huge increase for those people that are willing to take advantage of the situation and push forward. Very similar to what Jessica was saying at the very beginning with her business.
Brilliant, thank you, Adam. Alison, and bring you in terms of the ecosystem, and we mentioned earlier about your locality in the city centre, but also as a medium-sized business with, I think it's 4 locations across the city region, if that's off the top of my head. So apologies if I've got that wrong. But within the ecosystem, regeneration of place has a massive implication, doesn't it? Now, how can that actually cascade down into the wider supply chain, so professional services and that kind of sector? How can that take place over the course of the coming period?
Thanks, Paul. I'll apologise to our 2 officers that you missed there. We're actually in 6 locations around the city region, and as Paul has said, about half of our people are in the city centre, and the rest are in North, Wirral, South, and Liverpool, and in Knowsley. So we've got quite a spread, and it's important. I'd just like to really start by echoing something that Adam said about communication and collaboration, because I just think that's so important. As a professional services business, we sit alongside a lot of other businesses, and we are advising them, helping them and supporting them, and that's how we grow. Over the last 12 months, I think there's no secret in the fact that for the legal market generally, nationally, the area where there was a complete slowdown in instructions was commercial work, as businesses entrenched, got into defensive mode, pulled in all their tentacles and decided to sit it out and see what would happen. And then towards probably the end of the last calendar year was when people started putting feelers out and thinking, actually, we can't wait anymore, let's do things. And businesses started to look at expanding and growing or merging or taking on new staff, or changing their structure. We've had quite a few inquiries of new businesses, including restaurants and bars, wanting to set up in Liverpool, which is amazing, and sort of really, I think, bucking the trend. And for a business like us and other professional services businesses, obviously that's what we need to see in order for us to grow as well. For us as a business as well, whilst Jessica and Dave were talking very much about the everybody being very keen to return to the office, I think we are slightly different in that for law firms there was quite a lot of remote working going on anyway, and a lot of our people do really still relish working at home, and do feel they're more productive. They don't want to do it all the time, and we actually surveyed our staff, and we're about to do it again, but overwhelmingly on the last survey I think 85% of people wanted a hybrid model. But as a Bruntwood tenant, I think Jessica will be delighted to hear that what we don't want to do is lose our presence. So what we're looking at is how we change our workspace and our culture to make it more of a hub, a place where ideas are exchanged, where people come together. And in particular, what we can't lose is the training of the next generation, because the junior people are the ones who've lost out more on this. An experienced lawyer can pick up their laptop and work from anywhere. It's the juniors who need to learn. They need to hear other people. They need to, that osmosis of what you absorb, not necessarily about the law, but about how you talk to people, how you communicate, how you break bad news, how you deal with people's expectations. So we're in a process of looking at how we balance all of that whilst giving our more senior people the opportunities they want to be more flexible, and still making sure that we can bring through our next generation and keep up our high standard of training. But it has also enabled us to grow our base of national and international clients, because it doesn't matter now where we are. And we've also been able to recruit people who've come to us from different parts of the country, who have, as you'd be delighted to hear, wanted to relocate to Liverpool because they know what a fantastic city it is. And I think, we all know that Liverpool is a fantastic place to live and work. I am very, very proud to have been born and bred in Liverpool, and I will shout about it to anyone who comes into my locality who doesn't know. I think we do need to get that message out. I think going back to the communication point and the collaboration, I think the important thing is that the representatives of business of whatever type within the city region work together on this to get that message out, to bring investment in, rather than having some kind of a fragmented approach. And that needs to be communicated as well to all of the businesses within the region so that they know what's happening and they can work together.
Yeah, here. I think we'd all agree with that sentiment, Alison. I'm going to just move things on a little bit, because we talked about some, organisational level considerations, and the point Jessica made, one of her statements was about the government focus on towns almost at the expense of cities, and of course it's an agglomeration effect really, where urban regen can stimulate wider benefits, but we know that. There's a criticism in the past that larger regeneration schemes only benefit city centres. So I just wondered if we could ask the panel about, how do we enable more local regeneration projects in some of the more deprived areas across the city and provide real local opportunities? As we know, Liverpool has got a huge amount of inequality with, in terms of life expectancy, in terms of worklessness, in terms of poverty, educational attainment. So how can some of our regeneration schemes really benefit a wider geographical area in the city and really make a difference around inclusive growth? Can I start with you, Jessica? Sorry to pick on you again.
No, that's fine. I don't feel picked on at all. I think this isn't a straightforward question, or we would have cracked it a long time ago. And I think some of the sort of foundations have been put in place about thinking about connectivity, both transport connections to connect job opportunities and people into the cities, and I will come on to towns in a second. We put in place as city regions good, the best infrastructure that we can, and that needs to keep developing to enable people to have those opportunities. There's more to be done at community level to help people access those roles than just plonking in a tram or plonking in a train line. And actually, my experience as a school governor in Manchester, in Beswick in Manchester, showed that although we were only a mile from the city centre, the kids in that school didn't feel that the city centre was theirs and was somewhere that they could access. So even very small distances can make those things feel very different, very separate. And so, that work about how you engage young people in the opportunities that their city provides them, not just providing them with skills, but providing them with a sense of opportunity and a sense of aspiration and a sense that it's not so it's their place as well, and that's both by supporting young people, but also encouraging businesses to be open to those things. And I'd just like to pick up on the role of the office in that, actually, because we talked about mentorship and how important it is for development of young people, but it's also a great leveler for people. You know, just imagine if I was sat in an overcrowded house with my brothers and sisters running around behind me, and you know, not having the opportunity to be able to act professionally or be seen professionally, and I think that is a real impact that we don't think about enough. And if I think about, well, okay, so how do we support regeneration in towns and cities? This isn't a new thing. There's plenty of examples of really good regeneration projects in towns, but I'd like to go back to this kind of point about science and R&D and innovation, and thinking about how we use the expertise we have in our cities and our universities and our institutes to take more of the manufacturing that we can do, more of the advanced manufacturing, more of the innovation into our businesses, much nearer market, so that we're not just doing high-end research. And I know that we're not only doing high-end research, but that we do more of that near market activity. And that's stuff that can be and will be better if we seed it through our city regions, and so that it's not just in one place within the city region, but it is in many places, in many forms, and that we're networking those together, we're creating an ecosystem around it, and we're developing a skills agenda that will support it. And I think that takes, that's where I would see one of the great opportunities for the city regions that can act strategically and preferably have some investment from government to support that approach.
Terrific. Dave, undoubtedly you will have been delivering schemes within major regeneration projects. How do you see that sort of cascading of benefit into communities, particularly deprived communities?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've been involved in a few schemes over the years, and I always sort of reflect on our time in and around the Ancoats area in Manchester, where I think there was great intent to develop that area, which I was born up around, if I'm honest with you, and I knew how deprived it was. And there was a lot of investment there, as in and around the Beswick area, as mentioned previously. But I think inadvertently we displaced a lot of people as a result of that, as we brought in housing that wasn't quite affordable, and there were people who were using this space to commute quite quickly into the city centre. So it is being aware of that. As a construction industry, generally we find that when we're developing in a city centre, the reality is our workforce does tend to come around the neighbouring wards. If you work in Liverpool, very few of the guys and ladies who deliver the projects are necessarily from the city centre. And it's interesting the point was made. I live in Widnes, and around us we've got quite an industrial heritage and manufacturing heritage. And I strongly believe there is something in linking manufacture to education and research within the city centres. And I think, therefore, that benefits all. And there are models around the country that do that. It goes back to that collaborative thinking and communication and that joined up regional plan. And if we can get there, I think manufacturing itself in our industry is going to be the way forward. We need to do more off-site in the first instance to get to our zero carbon agenda, etc. So, I tend to agree. It's that link between research and education in the city centres, and then looking around the neighbouring towns for supporting manufacture and the likes.
Dave, do you think, this is maybe a question for you and Tony, do you think enough is done to enforce that inclusive growth agenda in projects? Is there a compulsion on contractors to focus upon that? I know there's obviously obligations through tendering processes and such, but do you think there's enough done to ensure that benefit is felt in the wider economy, and does more need to be done?
I think more needs to be done. I think there are pockets of really good examples. So the likes of the SCAPE framework that really do drive KPIs and performance around it, and therefore the performance of contractors. But it's sporadic, and I think it should be more consistent across both the public and private sector.
Tony, what about yourself?
So, I mean, going back to a point that Jessica was making about enabling people to have different experiences, training and education are one of the primary ways in which you help people to have different experiences. And really, one of the recent surveys in the city region suggested that employers felt there were about 200,000 workers across the city region who weren't sufficiently skilled to do the jobs that they were required to do. So there is a big agenda with a skills gap, but this also is an agenda that relates to internally leveling up within the city region. And as you rightly said, Paul, we do have enormous inequalities within the city region as well as between the city region and other parts of the country. And a training focus and bringing that collaborative spirit to bring industries like Dave's industry and to also to cascade, as you rightly said, Paul, a very good word, to cascade that R&D initiative that Jessica was talking about, right down to the local level of training provision, bridge and organisations like the LEP, like the Chamber, like the City Council have a huge role to play in bringing industry, education, training providers, apprenticeship schemes together so that we are actually singing from the same hymn sheet. Pardon my religious metaphor there. And that we actually are seeing regeneration not trickle down, that never works, but actually leveling up in all our local communities. And training is just such a vital issue that we have to address. And of course, I would make the point that training needs to be focused on a green agenda for the next phase.
And training, and preparation for employment is key. But of course, at the end of that, it's really important that the opportunities exist for young people who've been trained up to get those opportunities. So I might just turn to you here, Adam. From the context of like procurement, you're a relatively small organisation. Are there any quick wins through the procurement process that can enable organisations like you to have a better opportunity of earning contracts and actually recruiting newly skilled people into roles where they can take advantage of the education that they hopefully receive and the utopian vision that Tony has outlined, and can actually then go forward and your business grows, they actually get to implement their craft into a career. But it's got to, is there a role around procurement processes to help some of that happen? So
look, fundamentally, procurement as a whole is quite difficult, especially for an SME business. It's not orientated really for business of our size. Simply, in a lot of cases, we're asked to hold a £10 million insurance, which is on a job that might be 250k, which obviously is just kind of excessive. So fundamentally, we just have refrained from it. The time investment involved in it and the cash outlay for it is prohibitive to us. So the best way that it could work is the scaling of that and a more realistic expectation of those required insurances. However, like leading on from what Tony was talking about, in terms of the individual and the opportunities that those people have, as well, it shouldn't be expected from the individual, but that individual should be like kind of hungry for self-development led internally. And we really do need to promote that from the baseline education system. So not waiting until they arrive with Tony or onto the apprentice site with Dave, but essentially looking at really, really young ages and then sorting the education system from that respect. One of the, I'm a big believer in podcasts, self-education. I don't think that you can ever kind of go away from it. And it's not just about listening to the fun stuff, but listening to the personal development stuff. And And one of those said that no person, like I love this quote, it was, no person will be like kind of on their deathbed or in their final moments and be thinking about, oh my God, I just wish that I'd liked a couple more photos on Instagram. Like it's like nobody would be doing it, but everybody would be thinking about like kind of how they could have led a better life and personally developed themselves and taken advantage of those opportunities in front of them. And that's why we get involved with like the kind of the Reba Ambassador program. We get involved with Place Northwest, and we're ambassadors for them as well. Because I truly believe it's about sorting it out from the foundation level without using the pun. Sorting it out from foundation level and then moving forward from that respect. And in that relation, then opportunities come to those people that are really built for them and search them out. And we as an organisation have always employed primarily on like the attitude of that individual, and really what that individual wants to achieve. Because training and like of those missing bits of the jigsaw can always be filled in.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, well, the dog approved of your point there, clearly, Adam. Just to start to wrap things up, you know, the future over the next 12 months on the regeneration front, we've covered a multitude of issues and opportunities this morning. What do the panel feel, almost in 30 seconds? What are the barriers to future regeneration, and how can we collectively overcome them? I'm going to start with Alison.
Thank you. I think one of the barriers is what we've just been talking about, which is the lack of confidence in a younger generation and people maybe further away from big business and city centres to see what opportunities there are there for them. And I think that's something that we all have a duty to help with. I mean, I go and talk in a lot of schools and to students, although, as Adam has said, by the time they're students, it's probably a bit too late. What we need to be talking to people is sort of, you know, when they're 10, 11, 12, about what opportunities there are out there and introducing to people. And we need to be role models for that, because I'm a firm believer in the fact that role models are essential in the development of our economy and letting people believe what they can achieve. In terms of what's going to hold us back, my biggest stressor possibly at the moment is the fact that I feel like I have to keep challenging people, and I don't like the phrase when it goes back to normal, because I don't want it to go back to normal. I want it to go back to better. And one of the things that Tony has mentioned and is obviously a great advocate of is the sustainability side of things. And that's something that we have really picked up on in lockdown, because it is very important to me and to us as a business. And we have established a green team within our business, and we're looking at everything we do and how we improve our environmental impact, so that we can leave a stronger legacy there. So I think that has to be in the forefront of people's minds, and that's a way in which the future isn't just going back to normal, it's going back to better.
Very well put. Thank you, Alison. Tony, if I can bring you in here, please.
What I find with our students, and I don't think it's quite too late by the time they come students, but I understand absolutely what you're saying. I've got grandchildren who are 4 years old, and we really need to, and we do as a family, we work with our 4-year-olds to talk about, you know, some of the things that, you know, at their level, which are appropriate for their future. But for me, you know, what Alison was just saying, and what Adam was saying before, bringing young people, helping young people, mentoring them, acting as role models, finding all the opportunities we can to connect them to industry, to connect them to growing businesses, to see what's happening in the vitality of the SME and the third sectors in the Liverpool City region. Imagination. I know Paul said that I was being slightly utopian, but actually I fundamentally believe this, that we need more imagination. And that what I see with our students is that they are enormously inspired about the potential for new ways of doing things, and enormously anxious. It's not surprising in the, you know, an era of Greta Thunberg and the environmental strikes that are happening around the world, that our young people are enormously anxious about the future. We have a responsibility in our industries and in our businesses, in our educational systems, to give people hope and optimism. And I think the more we can do some of the things we've been talking about today, of collaboration, of networking, of mentoring, of bringing ourselves together, of showing a common purpose, much over maligned phrase, I'm sure, but that sense of common purpose around our city region. And I'm very optimistic. I don't really see the barriers. Yeah. I'm very optimistic about the future when I look at my students. Brilliant. And what they're saying.
Thank you, Tony. That's a great note to finish on that. Dave, if I bring you in here.
Yeah, very briefly, I agree with the other panelists. I think if you look particularly at our sector and bringing on young talent, we've missed out over the few years where we've lost interest from people coming through from schools. They look at tech businesses, they look at the Amazons and Googles of this world. But interestingly, I think the agenda around sustainability and the environment brings the built environment back into play, and I think it's a real opportunity to create careers and bring people on. So I'm really excited about that, being part of the industry, that we can really make a difference. And it's been mentioned many, many times, but it's all about collaboration. We have to find different ways of working together and not against each other in silos.
Brilliant. Adam?
Without having to repeat what anybody else has said, I mean, collaboration is paramount. I said it last time, but being positive in the face of adversity, I think that's the key. Like, you just continue ploughing forward, and everybody who's on the same boat, or as it were, will be on that same destination. And I think you've just got to be prepared for the destination to change. And by being like kind of ready to move and dodge the punches and keep on fighting. Yeah. I think that's the key. But fundamentally, promoting the idea of like kind of self-education, of that desire of people not just going and following the system of go from school to high school to college to then university and out into the real world, but finding what they're really fundamentally interested in. That gets everything. Apologies, my dog's absolutely like he's as passionate about it as I am.
And Jessica, for you, any thoughts about barriers and how we can collectively overcome them, please?
It's brilliant to hear someone else's dog barking and realise it's not just mine. Look, I like Tony, am a pretty optimistic person, so I don't know that there are actually barriers beyond those that we create ourselves. And of course, this is a challenging time, and of course, there's things that are going to be very difficult, and of course, there are people who have both lost loved ones, or lost employment, or lost hope. But actually, I think we've got a moment to come together and to really use the energy that I feel is pent up to springboard forward and to move on some of those things we've talked about and planned for as a city region, be that physical regeneration projects, development of skills, the mentoring that Tony and Alison have both talked about. This is a moment to sort of galvanise all of that and push it forward. And I think there should be an ask of business, which is step up, and what are you going to do to support these ambitions, be they sustainability, be they about reducing inequalities, be they about creating a culturally vibrant, interesting place to live. And I think that people within our businesses want to share in that agenda more and more, and we need some ambition and leadership around those priorities and how we choose to act.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you to our panel this morning for really insightful and enjoyable exchange of views. My thanks to everyone who has joined us in the audience today. I hope you've taken a lot out of that. I know I certainly have. I've got a couple of things just to highlight that are coming up from the Chamber. We've got our Well-Connected networking event on Zoom next Thursday, the 1st of April. Our next strategy event back here at MSP will be on the 30th of April, looking at health, well-being and the Liverpool plan. And we are running our afternoon at the races on Friday the 9th of April. Sadly, once again, we can't be there physically with 400 to 500 people as we usually would be on the Thursday, but instead we've got a digital version on the Friday, which is going to be a fantastic afternoon. All the details will be on your screen. Visit liverpoolchamber.org.uk for all of the details. I'm also really grateful for the panelists for highlighting the importance of skills and education, and in a couple of months' time we'll be theming this particular session around that particular agenda, and we are working with our local authority on a very exciting school engagement programme, and from the sounds of it I have 5 willing volunteers, so thank you so much. To everyone who's joined us today, thank you so much. We'll see you at the next Liverpool Chamber event. Great thanks once again to MSP for hosting us, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.